and thank you for joining us, and hopefully more will join us as the meeting progresses. We just wanted to say a little bit about 32 Steps to Togetherness, which is a project that we're running actually with Faith Forum for London and Edinburgh Interfaith, and it's been funded by the National Lottery for an 18-month, 2-year period. And the idea is to connect with social action leaders, particularly those that are faith inspired, and in sort of hot spots. And we're focusing on the east of England, where Peterborough is, London, obviously where a lot of you are today, Edinburgh and Greater Manchester, and also the northeast. So quite a bit of England, but not all of England in terms of our resource base. And 32 Steps is a manual, and I think, Zara, you're going to put something in the chat just to make sure everybody's had sight of that. It's a manual of steps that individuals can take and communities can take to try and overcome the divisions that we see in our society, both between young and old, different faiths, different ethnicities, and between different geographical areas. And we're going to try and do some in-person events. We've got something in Peterborough on the 7th of March, but a lot of our activity is obviously online, because people can kind of join from wherever they are without all the cost of travel and everything, and hopefully connect with social action leaders. And Zarin's just put that in the manual. Zarin, do you want to just say a little bit more about a couple of other things that we're doing right now, particularly with Zara Mohammed and Laura?
Yes, so we have two very interesting leadership coaching programs, one starting in March and the other in April, on coaching community leaders. So I will post the information right now about the two events. So basically, the first one, which is Think Well by Laura, is focused on helping leaders grow personally and professionally. So over 4 weeks, and these are online events, sessions. Community leaders will come together online to interact and share experiences and kind of turn their thoughts and into actions for positive change in the community. But then we also have Women in Leadership by Zara Mohammed, and that program is designed to empower female leaders in the community. So it will also be interactive sessions for initially all online, and then there will be an in-person event at the end to bring it all together. Each of them will run for 4 weeks at a time, but there are two separate programs that they have. So one will be starting in March for Laura, and the next in June, and then for Zara Mohammed, the first 4 sessions will be in April, and then the in-person event, and then there is another whole session starting in autumn. We're not sure about the dates yet, but we will let everybody know. But all the information are in the chat now. That's all from me.
Thank you, Zareen. And yeah, I mean, and if you know people that you think might be interested in these 2 sets of training that Zareen's just talked about, then please do get in touch with us. And there is actually, I think they can apply sort of online, can't they, Zareen, through a link. And we're trying to get sort of social action leaders, faith leaders from across the country, try and get a real mix in with those programs with Zara and Laura. So this morning we thought it would be really, and I don't think I could choose a more political day than today. We were just talking with Simon and others about obviously what's happening in Rochdale today, last night and today, around politics. So it's quite a political day. It feels like a very political day. And we thought we'd look at local councils and local councillors and see how they connect with people in the voluntary community sector and how they do that, and your thoughts on that. So the idea is to speak to Simon, Zach, Carla and John, and I'll be asking them some questions about their role as councillors, how they connect with the voluntary community sector. And then after they've spoken to us for a little while, we'd open it up at the end, And please do use your chat and think of questions or points that you want to make. That would be really fantastic. And I think we at Civil Society Consulting, we thought that, you know, local government was a really good way of, and local councils, a really good way of bridging divides in society and being active in their community. So we actually chose some councillors and a member of the assembly member at the London Assembly. We chose people because we knew that they were really active in their communities. So we're going to speak to Sima first. Good morning, Sima. I'm just going to pin you, I think. That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, good morning to everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and look, Simon, and I love that poster behind you. That says it all.
Oh yeah.
One Borough.
Yeah, so it's One Borough Festival.
Lovely. And
yeah.
And you're a very busy.
I'd love it to be loads of pictures of me, but I'd like to include the community as well.
Look, I mean, I know that you're a very busy councillor, and in fact, you're deputy leader of the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham. That's a big councillor job. How did you kind of get involved in local politics, and what's your little bit of your story, Sima?
Yeah, so I'm someone that was raised and brought up in France. I came to the UK in 20 years ago now, and arrived here directly in Barking and Dagenham. Actually, I followed my husband, but I was soon, unfortunately, abandoned in a homeless unit hostel in Barking, which I made my home. I was in a homeless unit on Boundary Road. I think every day I see that hostel, and it always keeps me very humble and to my roots. I'm a mum. I'm a single mum of 3 daughters, and when I came here, I couldn't speak English at all. Being French, I don't know how many people actually speak fluently English, and I used to struggle all the time, especially when you've got different accents, you've got different ways, and so it was a bit of a journey for me. I started with volunteering in a charity shop, and very quickly joined the Metropolitan Police as a volunteer. I worked as just doing a bit of admin in the Borough Intelligence Unit. And one day outside my school, I met my MP, and she was leafleting and campaigning against the BNP. I liked, what they were doing. I wasn't really aware of what, political parties are really doing, especially not about the Labour Party. But what I liked was what, the battle was about, which was about fairness, fascism and racism. And, we had the BNP here in Barking and Dagenham. Nick Griffin was standing to be the parliamentary candidate. We had a BNP candidate in every ward, if not more than one. So we were kind of like looking at the very first, fascist council in the country, if they would have won. I got involved in the party because I needed some support, and my MP wrote a letter of support. And when you helped me, and so I just asked the question, "Oh, thank you very much. How can I help you back?" This is the question you don't ask a politician, by the way. So she just put a pile of leaflets and said, well, maybe you can help me in leafleting in your area. And I started to leaflet and really liked what the Labour Party values were, and really liked the fact that, we were fighting against fascism and racism. And before even I knew, I was part of street meetings, coffee afternoons, doing my leafletings, getting involved. And over time, moms in schools especially were aware that, she works with the Met as a volunteer, but she knows the police and she knows the MP. And so before even, people kind of like, rely on you and come to you for advice or help or, a bit of guidance. And I was as well as campaigning, but never really thought about standing to be a councillor because I don't speak English, it was always something that would put me back. And I remember when I was asked first time to stand, I was in the MP's office and I was asked, would you consider standing because you bring in casework, you attending everything, it's really good, we need people like you. And I thought, no, I can't stand and the reason I always used to give is like, I don't speak English. Yeah, I went for it in 2010. First time I stood and first time I got elected. I was really privileged. I stood in the ward I lived in Gascon Ward, and I got elected successfully. And it is since an honor and a privilege that I carry on doing this role. I have moved my ward now because I have moved house, so I like to stand where I actually live. I now represent Northbury Ward, still in Barking and Dagenham. In 2014, I was re-elected successfully and I became the deputy leader of the council. And I have to say that, when you start, first time you start, and in 2010, for those that, know a bit in politics, the Labour Party actually lost government. So you join thinking, okay, I'm going to make some changes. I'm going to change the world. And you actually start to cut and cut and cut. And since then, we're just cutting services. But at the same time, you start to be more resilient and look at ways at delivering and, actually making a point that, you are elected for something, even beside the cuts, there is still opportunities, there's still ways of delivering and doing things. So it has been like, a challenge as well as, I have to say, I have enjoyed it a lot. It hasn't been always easy. It's always something that we should take on board and go along with what the situation is in the country, or even politically, or even where we are at the moment. Who would have said about the COVID situation? We've been through a proper roller coaster, but being in Barking and Dagenham, a place that is one of the most deprived borough in London and also in the country. We're one of the youngest in the country as a place. 1/3 of our population is under the age of 16, if not 19. So we're very young. And so it brings, those challenges along. We've got also, loads of opportunities at the same time. So, my journey into politics has been accidental, I have to say. Having said that, something that, I have thoroughly enjoyed. I've learned a lot. I do, use a lot of my skills and knowledge that, I've gained over the years. And also because I've lived in different places. And I'm very curious. I like to go in different places and actually see what they're doing with their community work. I had the opportunity to visit actually other countries where I think wherever I go, I kind of first try to link with people there which are into the voluntary social sector, or even see what other faith sectors are doing. I feel privileged in that sense. I don't think it's just for me to do this. I think a lot of people could do it. I think it's one of your 32 steps actually to be a bit more engaging and to be a bit more inclusive into what you do. So that's my kind of journey into politics. Sorry, it could be very long, but I'm keeping it short.
No, it's really been fascinating to hear that. I mean, and look, local governments in a parlous financial situation, as you say, Barking and Dagenham is a poorer borough. There's quite a lot of struggles there, and you've been working. I know that from experience, been working very closely with the voluntary community sector and doing work around community cohesion. The One Borough Festival, the One Borough Manifesto, I think it is as well. So you've been leading that work with engagement with the voluntary community sector. And how's that gone generally, do you think, Simon? Are you in a good place in terms of bringing different communities, different community organisations together, even though people are obviously financially in a tough place? Yeah.
Yeah, so in 2014, when I became deputy leader, I also became, I was at the time cabinet member for housing. And there is one thing that is evident, you know, we've learned this from those days of the BNP, is that we need to listen. And listening is not just, you know, an exercise that you would do. I think it has to really mean something. So when we say listening, it was very much the court listening, very, you know, very raw. You sit down with people, you ask questions, you might have difficult, conversations. Personally, it's not something I'm like worried or scared about. I like to have proper discussion, you know, whatever works, what doesn't, well, let's, you know, have every ideas on board. That's also one of your 32 together steps. So I think it's important to listen well and not do things to people, but actually involving them in making that decision and what they want. It's not about what I would like to see, but or what the MP would like to see. It's about what people want to have and see in their communities. So in 2016, we established. I was privileged to lead on the Borough Manifesto, which is a non-political document. We had that proper conversation with people, so we didn't leave any stone unturned. So I had, with the online and paper form questionnaires, I was like with my offices on on different stations in the borough from 7 to 9 in the morning. We would ask questions to people. I was like in coffee shops. I was in all the schools, in all the community places. Shopping malls, etc. Wherever you could in the market, asking those questions, having those conversations. And it wasn't just a tick the box exercise. It was a proper conversation with people. And having, after a long time for a local authority to have over 3,000 people responding and having that proper conversation and helping you shape that document is something that I'm really, really proud of. And as a local authority, we are definitely. But, you know, after shaping that Borough Manifesto, it gives you, you know, a proper overview of what the need is. But at the same time, we also had an independent growth commission, which also gave us, that was, sorry, pre-manifesto. And that also gave us, you know, where we are as a borough, what the opportunities, but also the challenges and what we need to do and change. So after that, we created my portfolio. So we transformed the way the council was working. Like all the councils, we were going through the cards. So you can't deliver the same amount of services or the same way. So there was a lot of prevention and a lot of like work towards making this council more, you know, value for money and also deliverable, especially on the economic aspect of it. So once we moved from this, we created this portfolio, which is community leadership and engagement. And under my role, I look after all the voluntary social sector, the faith sectors, the heritage, the parks, and also still housing a bit. Not the whole housing, but a bit of housing. So, which, you know, for me meant that, you know, having a conversation with the voluntary and social sector, we had the opportunity to do it with the Borough Manifesto, but then out of it, it was evident that we needed a better umbrella that brings, you know, those community groups together so they could start to really help each other. So we had the CVS building as organization, and which is still here. But the BD Collective is what came out of it. So having all those organizations working in more collaboration, and really like we're working together was also a great success. It's still a success. It's still something that, you know, is progressing and moving forward. There is that proper, you know, collaboration. And what was good that, having set up and led on this, meant that when Boris Johnson, 5 days before Boris Johnson actually, put the whole country on lockdown, we had called all those organizations together. So more than 87 community groups were invited here in the town hall. And what I did with my colleague, the leader of the council, is that, you know, addressed what the needs are of our borough. So we've got our data and insight team. So we know as a council, and that's before even the NHS or the government were giving us any information or insight on our residents. But we knew those that are isolated, those that are living, with special need or medical need because of the services and the data and insight that we had. So what we did is ask those groups to form what we called at the time BD Can, which was we had different hubs across the borough, and it could be like a local mosque, for example. I'm going to use the one in Northbury Ward. Al Medina Mosque was the hub for the whole of the town centre area. We had Kingsley Hall, which is also equally a great partner of the council. A church, community hall, etc., leading on another aspect in Dagenham. So overall, we had so many groups, and they were literally looking after like grocery, picking up the prescriptions, befriending over the phone, etc. And that created actually, I'm going to use the word togetherness, because that really created what you really want to see. You want to see your community groups by your neighborhood as well, all connected and working together. So I was yesterday in the mosque visiting with a group of officers, and we were talking about all the elderly people that would have never connected with the mosque, for example, are still in touch with the mosque. They're still coming to coffee afternoons, or they're actually doing like Tai Chi together now in the mosque. And they're doing things, and that really created that relationship, I think, that we should be very proud of. On the other hand, the community sector, voluntary sector, and also the faith sector really sprang, during COVID. And I think that is all due to the work that we had been doing prior to it. It takes time. It takes a lot of time and a lot of cup of teas to set up that. But we really need to start to, and I'm glad that we're doing it, but that connection, that working together, that collaboration, that dialogue, and listening the sooner you start it, and it has to be consistent. It has to be on a long term, with a good vision as well, because if you don't have the vision or the aim that you want to achieve, then, you're not really going anywhere. But it's always good to have that vision, and also to have that consistency. So I think this is how I've been going along with it.
Simon,
And
honestly,
the
that's
sector has
just
been brilliant.
terrific. By the way, and as everybody's probably noted, we are recording this so we can share it with others that couldn't be with us today. I mean, there's so much there, and in the chat, people are being quite inspired by you. If you look at the chat there, apparently you're absolute rock star, according to Martin, who lives in the borough. So really, we'll hopefully come to some questions at the end. Thank you very much, Simon. And we're hoping to work with local voluntary community organisations, particularly Zara Ibrahim at the Excel Women's Centre, to do an in-person event as part of Steps to Togetherness. So maybe you can participate in that, because we'd really love that if you could. Yeah, that'd be super. Thank you very much. I'm just going to go, we're staying in London, and we've got Zach. Zach is, I'm just going to pin Zach. Thank you, Simon. Just going to pin Zach. And we spent some time last week, Zach, talking about responses to refugees and migrants. We really enjoyed seeing you there. You're a London Assembly member. How did you get involved in politics?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark, and thanks for everyone for being here. I just want to first acknowledge how brilliant that was from Simon. I mean, to tell that story from going to apparently not speaking English very well to just delivering that amazing piece of inspiring, beautiful narrative that I think would inspire anyone. And also, I love the emphasis on togetherness, which is obviously the theme of this project and this event. I just want to acknowledge too that we're politicians from different parties, and very often when politicians from different parties get together, it's at hustings and they're all shouting at each other. And how much nicer it'd be if political conversation was more like this, actually looking for what is in common and inclusivity within our communities. And I think that also comes to your steps, your 32 steps. I really love number 17 about being a good neighbor. Essentially lowering our boundaries. Now, I put the caveat in here: we can only lower our boundaries if we feel safe and we're in a safe space, etc. But once those conditions have been created, I feel like if everyone could lower their boundaries more often, whether they're different political parties, different ideologies, different teams, different faiths, whatever it might be, for people to come together feels really, really important. So this is the answer to your question, I think, Mark. How did I get involved in politics? Well, it definitely wasn't part of the plan. I had no interest in politics whatsoever. In fact, if you'd asked me a couple of decades ago who the leader of the opposition was, I probably wouldn't have told you. And I was going to say shamefully, but I think that's also to do with political education in this country, which frequently doesn't educate people when they're young and have a truly interaction, about what politics is. People just see people screaming at each other on TV, and it's not a surprise that puts people off, particularly young women. But I was involved as a community theatre actor. So I was working with groups of people in communities around helping them to find their voice. So to give an example, I was working with groups of homeless people. There's an organisation called Cardboard Citizens, which was essentially looking at, if you've been evicted by a landlord, how do you know your rights? And how do you find your voice in order to be able to express your rights? Now, this was created by a guy called Augusto Boal, Theatre of the Oppressed, in the 1970s. He was working in the favelas. Those are some of the poorest communities in South America. And essentially what Augusto was doing, and we learned to do through the Theatre of the Oppressed movement, was work with communities and find the most vulnerable or oppressed people who would describe themselves as oppressed, and look at how they could challenge power or hold the most powerful to account. So homeless people is one example, but I was also doing it for a little while with migrant workers. So if there was a police raid, how would they know their rights? How would they know what questions to ask? And crucially, because frequently they're very sadly not listened to, if you're a bystander who sees what could be an illegal raid going on, what questions should you ask the police in a firm but fair way? And how do you challenge the hostility that might happen? And not to say it's always hostile, but if it is a hostile environment, how do you navigate that? And then the final group of people I was working with alongside the migrant workers and homeless people were people who have been in war zones. So again, if you've been in a war zone or you've been in a brutal, oppressive regime, how do you re-find your voice in this country? How do you re-engage with what community can mean and to know your rights? And I really love that work, and none of this is to knock that work. In fact, some days I think I'd love to go back to that work. It felt really important and really urgent. But I kept coming across a barrier, or as a movement, we kept coming across a barrier, which is no matter how articulate your voice is, no matter how much I can help empower someone to find their own voice, to speak truth to power and speak clearly, if there are systemic barriers in place in the whole way that structures are built, then no matter how clear or how much you know your rights, you can't get over those barriers. So it felt like I wanted to get involved in politics to help remove those barriers, or to help communities, crucially, facilitate themselves to remove those barriers. And ultimately, this can't be a top-down approach. It can never be about national politicians or leaders coming down and changing things, but it has to be about empowering people on the ground, grassroots democracy working. And I think there's often a narrative told in this country that we lean towards selfish or individualistic. But I think it's always important to remember that as soon as the pandemic hit, I think it was nearly 1 million people had signed up to mutual aid groups very, very quickly. And actually people's first response, once they dealt with their own health issues or their own fear, was, how can I help? How can I contribute to this situation? And it's great to hear places where boroughs and councils were stepping in to facilitate that role. And of course, I'm sure Simon would agree, it can't be all the council, all the borough. It has to be with community groups on the ground, and ultimately the borough is acting as that connector to make sure those things are happening. I think within this, and I think Simon spoke to this really well, I'm always cautious with community that it's not a cover for austerity. So community should always be amplified, it should always be celebrated, and it should always be empowered. But we'll remember in the 2010s, we had David Cameron's idea of a big society. I think the big society as a concept was a beautiful idea, and actually there's very little I can disagree with. But a big society to replace what should be vital public services or what should be government spending is quite sinister. So I think you can make both arguments, that we need to invest in public services, we need to make sure that councils are run properly and community groups are given the adequate funding, and we shouldn't be having to rely on charity, because ultimately charity will breed resentment if some people don't have the most basic services to get through. So I think all of these things have got to be balanced. And then just on a final thing before I bounce back to you, Mark, one of the things I love about my job, both as a London Assembly member, but also as deputy leader of the National Party, is just this week. Tomorrow I'm off to Leeds, then Wakefield, then I'm in Manchester, Wythenshawe, and then Stockport. But it almost doesn't matter where I go. Wherever I am in England, there's these amazing pockets of community groups going on where this volunteer work is happening. And I think it's brilliant what your project is doing, which is essentially looking, how can we learn from these projects? How can we make more of these projects happen? And what are the fundamental principles that are making this happen? One of my favorite things about the Green Party is people frequently think we just care about the environment of the planet. And of course, the environment and the planet are very important. I'm not here to say they're not, but there's no environmental justice without racial, social, and economic justice too. And it's really important that we join these dots. And far too frequently, the people who have done the least to cause the climate crisis are the people who are facing the worst impacts of it and are the least resilient to do it. That's both on an international level in terms of what's happening in the global south, and it's also in terms of empire and colonialism and some very complicated conversations there. But it's for practical day-to-day as well, based in the hyper-local communities, making sure that the people who are involved with their local park expand it. So it's not just people who have the time and money to care about their local park, but actually poorer communities, people from ethnic minorities who might not feel like they're adequately represented in some areas. It's really important we look at how to empower people's voices all the time to make sure that everyone's included in the conversation.
Thank you so much, Zach, and thank you for reminding us of the big society, because I think that was something that inspired us back in the day, but obviously was unfortunately completely subsumed into austerity. And I was interested that you thought that big society was a really good idea, and it was something that we should all be endorsed in. And we got Isabella Roberts talking about in the chat, which is quite interesting, about the fact that clearly we're all humans. And the need for togetherness is really important beyond party politics in that way. Isabella, do you want to just talk a little bit about, just very quickly, sorry, because we've got a couple of other people, about your anti-party idea? Isabella, I don't know Isabella. Is she there? Want to say anything?
Hi, Mark. Yes. Sorry. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks so much, and thanks so much, Zach. I'm not sure. Yeah, the name sounds familiar because I actually did run for the London Assembly back in 21 for a very small time. But since then, I've just completed a 2-year master's in digital politics and focused my thesis on collective intelligence to enhance democracy. And yeah, my initial anti-party, kind of idea or creation was born from the Partygate scandals. I'm sure everyone is aware, it was one war for them, another for us during lockdown. And that just really, shone a light on a lot of the flaws with representative politics and, these leaders that are meant to represent us. And now with that, the explosion of technology, AI, LLMs, ChatGPT in the last year, that was in parallel with my thesis research project. So tying in AI technology and what's capable there, as well as the need to really improve democracy in a more sort of direct, deliberative way, with getting the people actually involved, communicating, not just, one input, but actually connecting everyone else's stories, and actually increasing things like, like the perspectives, being able to actually improve one's understanding of others' perspectives, which again goes all the way to, to togetherness and being united, because we were also divided during COVID. So really just to restore all those connections, restore democracy in a deliberative, collective way, using AI technology. So anti-party is basically challenging the need for, I guess, party ideologies and party lines altogether, bringing it back down to people and the humans behind that, all of our stories, all of our experiences and our viewpoints, and using technology to enhance that communication and collective decision making.
Thank you very much, Isabella. That's and I think we'd really like to speak to you after this meeting as well, because that's clearly, what 32 Steps to Togetherness is really focused on. So thank you for coming in and coming to the meeting, actually. Hopefully we can collaborate with you more on that. That'd be really super. Thank you.
Amazing.
I'm assuming you're not in Hawaii or anything right now, but I kept looking at your background and the nice little breeze there. But no, thank you. I want to go up to one of our favourite places, Middlesbrough, where we've got John Gaboye, who we've known for quite some time now, certainly since the pandemic, and he was very much involved in a kind of COVID mutual aid support group with his Ubuntu Multicultural Centre, and we got very involved with helping that centre in its fantastic developments. And John has recently got elected to Middlesbrough Borough Council. I'm just going to no, it's just called Middlesbrough Council, I think. It's not a borough. Am I right?
Yeah, you are right. Yeah, Middlesbrough Council. Yes, it is.
John, I mean, can you tell us something about your local work in the community and how that led you into the politics that you're doing now as a local councillor?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Simon, Zach, and all the group on here. But before I start, I wanted to recognize one of my fellow local councillor who is online now, Councillor Jill Hewan. Thank you for always supporting me. She's on the call. Yeah, it's a good question. How did I end up local politics as well as community work? But I think it started many years ago. It's not something that I just started. As you all probably don't know, or maybe you may know, I'm originally from Uganda, and I've ever since I became a young, youthful man, I've always enjoyed politics. I've always enjoyed community work. And I think at one point when I was in 1993, 95, I told my mom that this guy who's the president now, he's not going to leave. And they told me, no, you're just a younger boy. You don't know what is happening. I said, yeah, from what I'm seeing, he's not leaving power. So until maybe another 40 years, but it's happening now. So, and I think that's one of the reasons why I came to UK, and I wanted to follow my my passion of community, of politics, because I've always wanted to bring those two things together, because politics and community work is the same. Politics is everywhere. You can't say it's not everywhere. It's everywhere. So yeah, when I came to England, I straight away wanted to get involved in the community, and I looked for different places to help. I looked at different parties to join, because I wanted to play those two things, community and politics. Thank God I found Labour, which kind of aligned very well with my other political party in Uganda, which is DP, Democratic Party. And I joined that. We started meeting, like Saima was saying, you started meeting, you go there and ask, how can I help? And because you get given everything, go and put this leaflet in the door. And community work also followed me because I wanted to help the community. At that time, I wanted to bring Ugandans together. There was no group of Ugandans. I created that. We worked together for about 4 or 5 years. But as you work with communities, many other communities want some support, some help. And at one point I thought, come on, why can't I formalize working with everyone instead of working for only one Ugandan community? So hence the rise and the creation of Ubuntu Center, because we wanted to bring everyone together, Ubuntu, multicultural, and having a center as well, because I was passionate about the center. I wanted some space where people can come and talk. And from the lived experience, I faced some bit of challenges in going where to socialize with other people. Many African people are known, I mean, they are scared. They are just scared of authorities. If you talk about community council building, you talk about things that are controlled by council or authority, we kind of don't want to go there. But I needed something neutral away from the council. So hence the creation of Ubuntu, which was very, very instrumental. Worked very hard during the pandemic. If anything, this is when Ubuntu, that's when Ubuntu was born. That's when people started recognizing us, including Mark and the friends, to an extent that we even won a civic award for the council for helping community, for giving that step, the first step for the community to access services. So probably that's how I ended up in politics and community in the UK here.
And thanks, John. And you got elected, was it last May? Is this your first, you're through, just coming through your first year as a councillor?
Yeah, this I got elected last May, but
Is it
I'm still,
enjoyable? Are you enjoying it?
yeah, I'll come to that. But this is my third time. This was my third time trying because I've
Oh, all right,
always
yeah.
yeah.
That's I'm
So,
lucky.
so yeah, so I did try the last 8 years and I didn't win, but this time round I managed to win, and it's nice. I'm enjoying it. I'm learning a lot. There is a lot to learn. I mean, there's a different language out there that you need to learn and understand how, and the steps, the protocol, this procedure that you need to go through to get something done. It can be complex, and to me, it's what the community needs to learn. The community needs to know that you can't just say that I need this road tarmac, I need this being collected now. It can't work. You need to go through steps to make sure that that issue is resolved. But yeah, I'm enjoying it, and I would like to see that many community members, those who are working for the community, people who are trusted by the community, that they can be part of this, and it helps. It helps to influence decisions because we walk, we talk, and we go there with lived experience. But until they realize that that lived experience can change things, to me, it won't work. But we need to be there on the table, and we need to talk and say that lived experience is the only way to improve change.
And look, John, I mean, Middlesbrough is one of the poorest areas in England. I think it's very, very near the top. And your ward, is it Newport Ward? I think it is Newport Ward. Yeah, very deprived community, very different communities. What do you do as a councillor to try and bring those people that are really under the cosh, with cost of living and all the sorts of problems in your work? How do you bring them together in your work and as a councillor, what do you try and do there? And with your colleagues, obviously your other ward members.
Yeah, it's true, Mark, that in Newport is deprived. We're looking at 35% of households classified as deprived in one of the dimensions. We're looking at a town or a ward that is growing very fast with diversity. Looking at about 17% of identified in 2011 as a percentage. And I think if you look at how fast it's growing, I mean, 51% is growing. It's growing very fast since 2011. So it is a very young but most deprived area. And how do I bring people together? How do I talk to them? I mean, it's so difficult that we have sometimes language barrier. People don't really understand the communication. So we need to have that lived experience, something to explain. It might be that a language, just English, but it might be that it's just how things are done. The culture of doing things is so different from some people, some of us where we come from. So we need to explain more. We need to go a mile to make people understand how things should be done. To me, that's one of the most barrier here. But we're trying our best to communicate through surgeries, like every day of the week. I'm at the Ubuntu Center where I can meet everyone. Phone call. I call people all the time. My local fellow ward councillor, she's always in the ward. She's always phoning. She's always texting, and so we're trying to be available. It's about being available where people can meet you and talk to you and discuss with you, and then ask you to do things. Where you can't do things, you do it. Where you can't, always say to them that I can't do this today. I do tomorrow, or I do the next, and keep communicating to the residents that which steps you are, at what point you are in reporting problems. So that's how we bring them together, but it can be quite difficult.
Thank you, John. And I've got I think everybody in the room has hopefully got a real feel of like Simon and Zach, a real grassroots feeling of how you work with voluntary community organisations in your communities. And we've got a film. Actually, we've got a film. It's completed with yourself, isn't it? So we've got a film, and we've got 3 or 4 that are nearly ready to be showing people. about the work of groups like Ubuntu Multicultural Centre. We're doing one in Barking, we're doing one in Redcar, and we're doing some work further in Peterborough and Rochdale to show some different community groups. So, John, it's really always good to have you very involved in our work and giving us a lived experience to shape this project, because I think that's a key ingredient of how we can be successful with this. So thank you, John. We'll come on to some questions, I think. Jill's saying some nice things I noticed in the chat about. We've got last but no means least, Carla Barato, who we have known for a while as well, actually, in Thetford. It's a small town of about 30,000 people in Norfolk. And we just thought it'd be really good because obviously you've got Simon from a London borough, you know, challenging, tough London borough, obviously John in Middlesbrough, Zach in that kind of wider London area. But we thought it would be really good to speak to a town councillor. And Carla, so thank you for joining us today. How did you get onto the town council? And I think you've been there for quite a while now, haven't you?
Yes, well, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Mark. My journey into politics or into the town council is a little bit like Simon's and Zach's. I can almost tremble and fall into politics. I never really, was never a vision or something I aspired to do. I still don't, but I'm still doing it. So something has to be working out. I'm quite honored to be here in a platform where there's other councils of minorities and diverse backgrounds that are at the level of county councils and boroughs, such as the previous speakers. My town council is in a smaller town, and it's also in the east of England, so it's a very different dynamics from major cities like London, Dagenham. You know, all those places are very vibrant with mixed communities. Here we have the two sides to the coin. We have a very mixed community, so about a third of the population is from migrant communities due to the filling of works in the rural agricultural sector, transformation, manufacturing. Because we usually call, you know, East Anglia the cellar of England. So everything gets produced here, gets shipped and it supplies the whole of the UK when it comes to, you know, vegetables, meats, etc., etc. I'm originally from Portugal. I lived for a little while in Canada, which my husband grew up there, so I was there for a little while. Then I went back to Portugal, and eventually we settled on the middle term. The England seemed like the concession between the two of us, close enough to Portugal, but English enough for him. I've been here since 2006, so it's been a while. I started doing community work much right away. I just wanted to do something rather than sitting at home doing nothing till I got my first job. So I started helping other charities, and soon enough I realized there was a massive migrant community, difficulties with the language, etc., accessing services, and those skills, my language skills, could be helpful in that sense. So kind of evolved from there. When I moved to Thetford a few years ago, well, I could have moved to any other town in Norfolk, but it's just that I had two boys and I adopted a daughter, and it kind of how the right house kind of came up in Thetford. I was already doing community work here, and as a new adoptive parent, I just decided to move and start afresh. I've actually done a lot of community work, a lot of charity work. We've done youth activities. We've done a lot of massive amounts of distribution of food, over 100 tons of food parcel distributions during the period of COVID. So we've done a lot of community work with a small charity. Me, my husband, and a few others founded a few years back. Being a councillor, it really started with me being a bit aggrieved about some of the services of the local council and how they were dealing with us. At one point, our charity was a tenant, and we were trying to liaise with them. Things weren't going very well. And there wasn't any other council. There was no British sitting here. There wasn't one for ever, pretty much. And just out of just to wind them up, I decided to put my name on the list. I figured I probably won't get elected, but while my name is there, it will keep them on their toes. And it was a bit like that. So I've run firstly and got elected in May 2019. It created a bit of a fuss because it was at the peak of the Brexit discussion in 2019. And I was this young-ish for the comparable with the majority of the councillors, would tend to be older British gentlemen. in this area. So comes this woman from nowhere with an accent trying to run for council, where there's never been a migrant before, where we forget whether there was Portuguese or Lithuanian or Polish or any of the other communities which have massive amount of people living here, but there's just no representation. And here I come along, I run as an independent. So I just made my leaflets, I knocked on doors, I've done the legwork, just as a community person wanting to try to fight a bit for more transparency in clarity about the council services and what they could do for the residents, just as a neighbor and as a resident. So when I got elected, it created a bit of a fuss because suddenly we have this headline on the local papers, and some of them abroad in Portugal, including that this migrant woman, is elected to a full pro-Brexit council. You can imagine that went down very well with some of the people, but so it was a bit of a challenge initially. I did find, I see a comment on the chat, a lady saying, how do you deal with the friction? This is something you build over. I want to say, pass on to this, any potential, whether it's men or women, especially young women that might be considering getting into politics, this is something you need to build up. It's a hard shell. You can't take everything to heart. There will always be people that they're not your greatest fans, but you don't need to please everybody. As long as you can find middle ground, be diplomatic, sit down and have a conversation and find middle ground with everybody. You don't have to always be everybody's best friend to achieve something, to represent something. So I wanted to enforce that, because this is something I found, especially in the first mandate, as I got re-elected now here in May again for my second one. You're not always going to please everybody. It can be a challenge. Sometimes it's tough, especially in an environment when you're the only one. And I want to do a whole lot more, but I'm a voice amongst 18. Obviously, I'm not going to achieve a lot, but what I've learned is that I do have a say. And whether or not they agree with me and the motions are carried forward, they still have to hear my point of view. And I think the one major difference I achieved over the past 5 years now, it really is that they understand me a lot more. They are no longer so afraid of what I represent when I sit at the table with them. It is about breaking ground, and it doesn't happen overnight. It is a gradual thing. So I find I empathize a lot with some of the other speakers like Simon's X, etc., and more. Similarly, I think when you come from something different, people fear what you might contribute, or you might change the way they do things. Change is a good thing, but it's how we go about it is sometimes. You really have to have tough skin. Apart from that, have patience. You find that sometimes you go to those council meetings and it's like you hitting your head against the wall. That is not the best option. They're not on the right track. You still have to go with it. You still have to come back the next meeting again, despite of things not working out the way you want, because that's just what job you sign up to do, basically, when you represent the community. So in regards to the 32 steps of togetherness, I fully relate with the one that has to do with get involved with your politicians. Steps 29, up to 31. If you don't have to run as a candidate to local council, but if people on the ground, if they want to put themselves forward, but if they at least have a voice and they are more involved in politics, one of them is use your vote, clearly. I think one of the major failings here of the migrant community is that some of them do vote, but not the majority don't. Whether they don't understand it, whether they just disregard it, or whether they just think they ain't going to make a difference. It won't make a difference on the grand scale of things immediately, but if they all vote and have a say, and we have more seats at the table, so ideally I'd love to have some companions in the council with me. So if more councillors came along to join me, it'd be great. At the moment, I'm the only one. I kind of got used to fly solo in this council for the migrants and, for women in general and other things. But it'd be great if more people got involved. And sometimes it's just about writing a note to your politician, say, look, I don't agree with this. Is there anything we can do? But if 5, 10, 20 people write the same no, then it starts making a difference. So one of my favorite steps is the one, use your vote and write and interact with your politicians. And the other one has got to be help out, for sure. Volunteer or joining clubs, anything. I find that the reason why I'm in the position I am today and how I got involved It really is, because I've started wanting to do something and I didn't know what else to do. So I decided to volunteer. So when I started volunteering, it kind of escalated from there. And one thing leads to the other. You get involved with the community, you learn new skills, to improve your knowledge, and kind of things kind of evolved, and I end up in council today. I also liaise a lot with Portuguese embassy, Brazilian, etc. So I try to build those bridges. So one of my major aims as a councillor locally is to build those bridges between the community, maybe in the first, and the migrant communities and the local groups. So being a voice for them and try to establish those links, trying to get sort of a twinning or a partnership with the town in Portugal. And we are arranging some cultural events and festivals that we have lined up. And we are working in the background to plan for the next year in 2026 as well, with the cultural exchanges and whatnot, to try to promote the culture and bring people a bit more together. So that's the summary one in a nutshell. Feel free to pose questions.
Thank you very much, Carla. Thank you. Muito obrigado. And it's so good to see what you've achieved in Thetford. I think there are 18 town councillors. I think there's only 2 female town councillors. Is that right? Yeah.
At the moment, there's 3 of us.
Oh, 3. Okay.
I'm the second youngest. I was the youngest when I started. No, from the women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But really, and looking forward to working with the town council on 32 steps and other things actually that we're doing there. So thank you very much. Look, we've heard from 4 terrific local politicians. I hope you agree. I mean, absolutely terrific, doing some work in their communities and connecting with the volunteers.